Have you ever sat down at a steakhouse, ready for a perfect cut, only to regret every bite and the bill that followed, while wondering if any are actually worth it? Think sizzling plates, baked potatoes piled high, and then that sinking feeling when the special tastes like shoe leather. But a few places still get it right. Which ones would you trust with your next steak night? Let's kick things off with the Aussie-themed chain that talks big, but too often serves steaks that feel second class. Outback Steakhouse. When Outback first opened, it felt like an adventure. Boomerangs on the wall, the famous Boomin' Onion, and menu items that sounded exotic. Alice Springs Chicken, or Joey menu for kids. It was not just dinner. It was a theme park for the taste buds. The steaks promised bold flavors and hearty portions, all wrapped up in a fun Australian vibe. For families, it became the go-to for birthdays, graduations, or just Friday night splurges. But today, the magic has worn thin. The theme feels more gimmicky than genuine, and the food often does not live up to the hype. Steaks that should arrive sizzling and juicy too often land overcooked, underseasoned, or worse, lukewarm. The Bloomin' Onion, once a wow factor appetizer, has become more of a greasy mountain that leaves you full before the main course even shows up. Add in rising prices, and suddenly that value meal feels like a gamble you are not sure is worth it. Service plays a role too. Inconsistent wait times, staff stretched too thin, and a dining room that feels more rushed than relaxing all take away from the experience. And let's be honest, if you're going to spend your hard-earned money on steak, you expect more than average. Of course, nostalgia still pulls people back. There is comfort in the familiar, and for some, Outback is tied to good memories. But when the food does not match the price tag, memories are the only thing keeping the brand afloat. So tell me, when was the last time you left Outback Steakhouse feeling like the steak was worth the trip?
Sliding into the list is the cowboy-styled brand that looks bold on the outside but leaves flavor stuck at the door, Longhorn Steakhouse. Longhorn makes a big promise the moment you walk in. Rustic wood decor, cowboy murals, and menus filled with bold-sounding cuts like Renegade Sirloin or Flo's Filet. It feels like you have stepped into a ranch where the beef is as big and bold as Texas itself. The branding is strong, and on paper, it looks like a steak lover's dream. But then the food arrives, and reality sets in. The steaks are often cooked unevenly, with more chew than tenderness. What should be seasoned with bold ranch house flavor ends up tasting more like salt and pepper hurriedly sprinkled before hitting the grill. The sides, while plentiful, rarely shine. Mashed potatoes that taste boxed, salads that look tired, and bread that feels more filler than treat. For the prices they charge, the lack of quality becomes hard to ignore. Longhorn thrives on its image, but too often the experience does not back it up. Steakhouses are supposed to be indulgent, worth the splurge. But here, the gap between expectation and delivery is wide. Customers who grew up on true backyard grilling or mom-and-pop steak joints often find Longhorn's version bland and uninspired. To be fair, not every location struggles equally. Catch the right cook and you may get a steak that hits the mark, but consistency is the key to trust, and Longhorn does not always deliver it. Have you ever had a steak at Longhorn that felt truly bold, or was it all hat and no cattle?
Coming up is the Rowdy Roadhouse, where the peanuts on the floor are sometimes the best part of the meal. Texas Roadhouse. If you have ever stepped inside, you know the vibe right away. Loud country music, line dancing servers, buckets of peanuts, and that sweet smell of fresh-baked rolls with cinnamon butter. It feels like a party, not a quiet dinner. And for many families, that energy is the appeal. Add in affordable menu prices and endless baskets of bread, and Texas Roadhouse became the weekend hangout. But when you set aside the fun atmosphere and get down to the steak, that is where things go sideways. Too often, the cuts feel lower quality, with gristle and fat outweighing flavor. The cooking can be hit or miss, with steaks arriving charred on the outside but still raw in the middle, or worse, cooked well past the point of being juicy. What should be a tender sirloin ends up feeling like you are sawing through boot leather. The sides are no saving grace either. Mashed potatoes with lumps, vegetables that taste straight from the freezer, and salads that do not offer much freshness. Sure, the cinnamon butter rolls are still legendary, but if the bread basket is the highlight of your steakhouse, something is off. Texas Roadhouse leans heavily on its lively atmosphere, and for some, that is enough. But if you are going out specifically for steak, the food does not always justify the noise. Would you go to Texas Roadhouse for the steak or just for the bread and peanuts?
Next on the chopping block is the family buffet that once felt like a treat, but now serves up more disappointment than delight. Sizzler. For many seniors, Sizzler brings back memories of the 1970s and 1980s, when it was the affordable steak and salad bar combo that made eating out feel special. You would grab a tray, pile on lettuce, pasta salad, and whatever else caught your eye, then wait for your sizzling steak to arrive. It was casual, fun, and, at the time, felt like a bargain. But Sizzler today is a shadow of its former self. The salad bar, once the main draw, often looks tired. Wilted greens, watery pasta, and desserts that seem more plastic than sweet. The steaks themselves rarely impress. Often thin cuts cooked without care, leaving you with tough bites and little real flavor. What once felt indulgent now feels cheap, and not in a good way. The decor has not helped either. Many locations feel stuck in a time capsule, with worn booths, dim lighting, and an overall sense of being dated. For younger diners used to fresh and modern restaurant experiences, it is more depressing than nostalgic. Price-wise, it is no longer the deal it once was. With so many other dining options available, Sizzler struggles to justify its place in the steakhouse world. The name still lingers in memory, but the experience rarely matches the fondness of the past. Did you ever eat at Sizzler when it felt like a treat? And would you go back today just for old time's sake? Taking the spotlight is the Western classic that built its name on quality, but now tastes more like faded glory. Black Angus Steakhouse. Back in the day, Black Angus was a trusted name. You walked in and felt like you were about to enjoy something hearty and well-prepared. Wooden booths, rustic decor, and menus that promised aged steaks cooked to perfection. For families celebrating birthdays or couples out on date nights, it was a place that carried weight. A steak from Black Angus meant you were treating yourself. But somewhere along the way, the shine wore off. The steaks that were once the star now often come out unevenly cooked, sometimes chewy, sometimes lacking in seasoning altogether. Cuts that should be juicy and tender instead feel average at best, especially for the price. The sides, too, have slipped into mediocrity. Baked potatoes that feel reheated, vegetables that lack flavor, and bread that is more filler than delight. The issue is not just the food. Many locations feel dated, with interiors that have not kept pace with the times. What used to feel cozy and classic now feels tired. Service can also be hit or miss, with some diners reporting long waits and inattentive staff. When you add all of that to a check that feels high, the value equation does not make sense anymore. Black Angus still has its loyal fans, often out of nostalgia. For those who remember when it was a strong player, it can be hard to let go. But compared to modern steakhouses and even some mid-level chains, it struggles to keep up. Do you think Black Angus is holding on to its reputation, or is it time to admit it is past its prime? Rolling into the lineup is the Choice Steak Stop that leaves diners wondering if they really made the right choice at Western Sizzlin'. When it first popped up, Western Sizzlin' was known for giving customers options. The big draw was their choice steaks, meant to offer variety without breaking the bank. Add in a buffet line with sides and extras, and it felt like a full meal deal that families could enjoy without spending too much. But over time, that idea of choice started to feel more like confusion. The steaks themselves, while varied in cut, often lacked consistency. One bite might be tender, the next bite stringy and bland. The seasoning is usually minimal, and instead of tasting like a juicy steak, it can feel more like chewing through something reheated. The buffet, too, became more of a liability than a perk. Vegetables that sit too long, pasta salads that lack freshness, and desserts that feel mass-produced. It is not the experience steak lovers want when they head out for a special meal. Prices have crept up as well, making Western Sizzlin' less of the bargain it once was. And, with so many competitors in the casual steakhouse space, the cracks in quality stand out even more. For older diners who remember it fondly, there may still be a sense of comfort in visiting. But for new customers expecting bold, memorable flavors, Western Sizzlin' rarely hits the mark. Have you ever walked out of Western Sizzlin' feeling like you actually got your money's worth? Marching in with plenty of nostalgia but little real flavor is the once beloved budget spot, Bonanza Steakhouse. If you grew up in the 1970s or 1980s, you may remember Bonanza as one of the first true family steakhouse experiences. It was affordable, casual, and came with a buffet that seemed exciting at the time. For many families, it was the go-to spot when they wanted to eat out without spending too much. But the Bonanza of today is not the same as the one etched into memory. The steaks, once the centerpiece, now often feel like thin, poorly cooked cuts that lack the juicy bite people crave. Even smothered in sauce or gravy, the flavor is flat. The buffet tables, once a novelty, now feel tired and uninspired with dishes that look more like cafeteria food than restaurant fare. The interiors have not aged well either. Many locations look dated, and instead of a warm family environment, the atmosphere feels more like stepping back into a worn-out time capsule. For seniors who remember it fondly, it can be disappointing to see how much has changed. Bonanza once thrived because it offered a combination of value and fun. Today, it struggles to hold on, with little more than nostalgia keeping the doors open in some places. Do you remember going to Bonanza as a kid? And if you went back today, would it live up to that memory?
Sliding further down the list is the dimly lit throwback that has not kept up with the times. Steak and Ale. Back in its heyday, Steak and Ale was considered something special. With its dark wood interiors, candlelit atmosphere, and menu filled with hearty cuts, it felt like a place where you could enjoy a nice night out without breaking the bank. It was not fine dining, but it carried a sense of occasion. The chain's medieval-inspired decor made it stand out in the 1970s and 1980s. For many, it was their first introduction to the idea of a steakhouse that was a step above diners or fast food. And for a while, it worked. Families dressed up, ordered their steaks, and felt like they were part of something more refined. But as time passed, Steak and Ale failed to evolve. The menu became dated, the quality of the steak slipped, and the atmosphere that once felt cozy turned into something that just felt dark and old. By the time it tried to reinvent itself, most diners had already moved on to fresher, more modern concepts. Today, Steak and Ale is mostly a memory, with only a few attempts at revival. The problem is that diners now expect not only good steak, but also atmosphere and value. And Steak and Ale does not deliver any of those consistently. Would you be curious to see a Steak and Ale revival, or should it stay in the past where it belongs?
Landing in the mix is the all-you-can-eat buffet that promises steak, but too often delivers gray slabs of regret. Golden Corral. For many families, Golden Corral is less about a fancy steakhouse dinner and more about the endless choices at the buffet. Piles of fried chicken, mashed potatoes, salad bar favorites, and, of course, a steak station where you can watch your cut hit the grill. It sounds like a dream. Pay one price, fill your plate as many times as you want, and walk away full. But here is the problem. Quantity has always come before quality. The steaks at Golden Corral rarely match the kind of flavor or tenderness you would expect from a proper steakhouse. Too often, they are thin cuts cooked on a flat top with little seasoning, leaving you with chewy bites that taste more like filler than feast. Even if you ask for medium rare, you are just as likely to end up with something gray and overdone. The rest of the buffet cannot hide the disappointment either. Yes, you might score a decent roll or some passable mac and cheese, but the steak should be the star, and at Golden Corral, it rarely is. For seniors who remember the appeal of an affordable, all-you-can-eat night out, the nostalgia may linger, but the flavor does not. Golden Corral remains popular because it offers abundance, and for families on a budget, that can still be appealing. But when you measure steak by quality instead of by the pound, this chain falls flat. Have you ever found a steak at Golden Corral that was actually worth going back for? Or do you skip the grill line entirely? And here is the so-called neighborhood favorite that rarely lives up to its hearty promise: Charlie Brown's Steakhouse. At one time, Charlie Brown's sold itself as the friendly, local-style steakhouse. Cozy booths, a salad bar to kick things off, and steaks that aimed to balance affordability with quality. Families would head there for birthdays, work dinners, or just a relaxed evening out, expecting a warm meal in a comfortable space. The problem is that the food does not deliver the same way the name suggests. Steaks are often inconsistent, sometimes cooked past the point of juiciness, sometimes lacking any real seasoning. The salad bar, once a highlight, has become more predictable than exciting, with basic toppings that feel like they could come from a grocery store shelf. And for the prices, diners expect more than just okay. Add to that the atmosphere. While it used to feel homey, many locations now come across as dated and in need of a refresh. Service can be hit or miss as well, leaving customers wondering why they did not just go somewhere else. Charlie Brown's still has fans who enjoy the familiarity, and nostalgia does carry weight. But for steak lovers looking for a reliable, flavorful meal, it is hard to justify the stop. Do you think Charlie Brown's is a hidden gem for locals, or has it lost the charm that once made it stand out? On the brighter side, few meals feel as festive and plentiful, especially at lunch prices, as the endless skewers of Texas de Brazil. Unlike the chain steakhouses that struggle with consistency, Texas de Brazil brings a whole different experience to the table. It is a Brazilian-style churrascaria where servers roam the dining room carrying skewers of freshly grilled meat, slicing it right onto your plate. From sirloin to lamb to bacon-wrapped chicken, the variety keeps coming until you wave the little card that says you are full. The beauty here is that while dinner can be pricey, the lunch deals make this experience surprisingly affordable. For the cost of a mid-range steakhouse meal, you get endless servings of meat, a salad bar filled with fresh options, and sides that actually taste like they belong at a steak dinner. The quality of the cuts is often far better than what you will find at the avoid steakhouses on this list, and the fun, interactive style of service makes it memorable. Seniors, who remember when dining out felt like an event, will appreciate the flair here. It is not just eating, it is an experience. And unlike many chains, Texas de Brazil tends to keep the quality consistent across locations. It is not the cheapest meal you can buy, but for what you get, especially at lunch, it is a far better value than spending the same amount on a disappointing chain steak. Would you rather pay for one mediocre steak or enjoy endless cuts of meat at a Texas de Brazil lunch?
And finally, let's celebrate the Roadhouse chain that keeps things simple, affordable, and still delivers juicy, satisfying cuts at Logan's Roadhouse. Logan's does not pretend to be upscale, and that is part of the charm. You walk in, toss peanut shells on the floor, grab a basket of warm rolls with honey butter, and settle into a booth that feels relaxed and familiar. The menu is straightforward: steaks, burgers, ribs, and sides. And while it is not fine dining, it knows exactly what it is. What makes Logan's stand out compared to other chains is that the steaks, while reasonably priced, are often better than you would expect. Cuts like the ribeye or sirloin come out juicy, tender, and seasoned with enough flavor to make you nod in appreciation. The portions are fair, the sides hearty, and the atmosphere comfortable enough that you do not feel rushed. It is not without flaws. Service can vary, and the experience depends on the location. But overall, Logan's feels like it respects your money. For the cost of a disappointing steak at one of the avoid-at-all-costs spots, you can get a reliable, satisfying meal here that leaves you full and happy. For seniors especially, it carries a nostalgic vibe, a steakhouse that feels like the neighborhood spots of years past, without the inflated prices or gimmicks. Do you think Logan's Roadhouse deserves more credit as one of the few affordable steakhouses still worth visiting?
And that is our full journey through the steakhouse world. Now, share your own best or worst steakhouse story in the comments, tap the like button if you have ever wrestled with a tough cut of meat, and subscribe to the hidden menu so you never miss our next sizzling deep dive. And remember, the truth is not always on the menu.